This is a film about a Dalit poet. Narayan Gangaram Surve began his life as a foundling. His mother left him when he was born. And he was picked up by a mill worker, and which a lot of it you'll see in the film. And he was brought up by him, and again the parents left him when he was 10. And he worked as a peon, and he went on to become one of Marathi's greatest poets. And his main contribution was, he was from Bombay, he was interacting with Urdu poets, poets from other languages. So he broke the barriers of the chaste Marathi that was used in poetry. To a certain extent, I can compare him with the poetry, his poetry with the poetry of Robert Frost, who would just through the conversations create a character for you. So sometimes Surve, you don't know who's speaking, what is the context, because nothing is described. He would just start with a dialogue or a line, spoken line, and then he would, through the strength of the word, evoke a character for you and an incident for you. So this is, and you will have some poems in Urdu, some poems in half Hindi, some poems in melange of languages. But he was a poet who had a tremendous control over the texture and the rhythm of the spoken word. So in a sense, he goes closer to the tradition of oral poetry in Maharashtra, though it is contemporary. And in his life, Ashok Vajpayee had told me this story, that when Surve was the president of the Sahitya Sammelan in Parbhani, there was a crowd of about 1 lakh to listen to his poetry. And after that, for selling the books, they put the books in a palanquin, and the author goes with the books. And Ashok told me that people who actually came and touched his feet, and there were hundreds of them. And one story which is not in the film is some of his poems were so moving and written with such simplicity and so elegantly. One of them was about mother. And he was in a hospital, he was about to undergo a bypass surgery. And as he was being carried to the operation theatre, some of the ward boys recognized him and said, "Oh, Surve Master, you know, please, that poem of yours we had studied. Will you please sing it for us?" So here he is lying on a stretcher, surrounded by, then other ward boys came, and his surgeon is waiting for him. And after a few minutes, the surgeon came out saying, "What is happening?" So he found that Narayan Surve was holding court, and there were so many courtiers, and that's why there were not enough people in the operation theatre. Because instead of being in the operation theatre, they preferred to see Surve, and they preferred to listen to poetry of Surve. So when the doctor came, he said, "How can you do this?" He said, "Is there a greater way for a poet to die than being surrounded by admirers and with his poetry?" And as a result of Surve's, to a certain extent, he also reminds me of other traditions of poetry. One is Jacques Prévert in French. His book is called Parole. And in French there are 2 words, mot, le mot, for the printed word. And parole is the spoken word. So Jacques Prévert's poetry was written during the French Resistance, and so the collection of poems is Parole. And the other poet who actually revolutionized his own language was Pushkin, because he wrote his great book, Yevgeny Onegin. What is it called in English? It's Yevgeny Onegin. He wrote it in such simple Russian, with such a wonderful texture, of the words and feel, and brought such quality of the spoken, immediate, direct communication that it is Russian poetry's most untranslatable book. Even a great literary figure like Vladimir Nabokov. In fact, Nabokov's is supposed to be the worst translation of poetry, of Pushkin's poetry. So every ship has been shattered and shipwrecked on the rock of Yevgeny Onegin. All the ships of the translators, so you see a lot of ruins around Yevgeny Onegin. So with this, I think we can start the film, and I'll pick up any questions at the end of the film. The film is 45 minutes.
मी जन्मलो तेव्हा काही नाव धारण करून जन्मलो नाही, मात्र नसेन तेव्हा ह्या पृथ्वीच्या पाठीवर एक नाव ठेवून जाईन, ते म्हणजे नारायण गंगाराम सुर्वे. नारायण गंगाराम सुर्वे. जात माहित नाही, वय अंदाजे 72 ते 75, शिक्षण वर्नाकुलर फायनल व प्राथमिक शिक्षक सनद, काम मिलमध्ये बालकामगार, शाळेत शिपाई, प्राथमिक शाळेत शिक्षक, आज निवृत्त, व्यवसाय कम्युनिस्ट चळवळीचा कार्यकर्ता आणि ना घर होते ना गणगोत, ना घर होते ना गणगोत, चालेल तेवढी पायाखालची जमीन होती, दुकानांचे आडोसे होते, मोफत नगरपालिकेची फुटपाथ खुलीच होते. अशा देण्यात आलेल्या उठवळ आयुष्याची उठ बस करता करता टोपली खाली माझ्यासह जगझाकीत दररोज अंधार येत होता आणि जात होता. मोजले सर्व खांब ह्या रस्त्यांचे, मोजले सर्व खांब ह्या रस्त्यांचे, वाचली पाट्यावरची बाराखडी, व्यवहाराच्या वजाबाकीत पाहिलेत हातचे राखून कित्येक मारलेले गडी. हे जाती जातीत वाटलेले वाडे, हे जाती जातीत वाटलेले वाडे, वस्त्या दारावरचे तांबडे नमरी दिवे, सायंकाळी मध्यभागी असलेल्या चिडियाघराभोवती खोटाळणारे गोंगाटांचे थवे, अशा तांबलेल्या भाकरीसाठी करपलेल्या, अशा तांबलेल्या भाकरीसाठी करपलेल्या उदास वांदेवाडीच्या वस्तीत टांगे येत होते, घोडे लोळण घेत होते, उभा होतो नालीचा कोका सांभाळ, ले पकड़ रसी, हाँ केच डरता है क्या, बम्बन का बेटा है रे तू साले, मजदूर है अपन, पकड़ घोड़े को, हाँ ये वाले मेरे छोटे नाल वाले। याकूब नालबंद वाला हंसे, गड़गड़े, पतरी वाला घोड़ा धूल झटकी धुआ हुई, अपने को काला कांडी, तेरे को जलेबी खा म्हणत दुसरा अश्व लोळवला नाही. याकूब मेला दंग्यात नव्हते नाते, तरीही माझ्या डोळ्यांचे पाणी कळले नाही. उचलले प्रेत तेव्हा मिलाद कर्माच्या गजरात मिसळल्याशिवाय राहिलो नाही. त्याच दिवशी मनाच्या एका कोऱ्या पानावर लिहिले हे नारायणा. त्याच दिवशी मनाच्या एका कोऱ्या पानावर लिहिले हे नारायणा. अशा नंग्यांच्या दुनियेत चालायची वाट लक्षात ठेव सगळ्या खाणाखुणा.
असं चहा
हो, श्यामच्या कृष्णाबाई, माझी पत्नी.
नमस्कार.
आणि हा आपला किशोर कदम, कविता लिहितो आणि माझी भूमिकाही करणार आहे आपल्या सिनेमात. चहा आणा ना. तू काहीही कर, किती नाटक केलीस तरी तू काय माझ्यासारखा दिसणार नाहीस.
नाही, प्रयत्न तुमच्यासारखा दिसण्याचा नाही, माझ्यासारखा न दिसण्याचा आहे. काय, मी तुमच्या परिसरात वावरणार, तुम्ही लिहिलेले बोललेले शब्द बोलणार, तुमच्या कविता मीच लिहिल्यात असं भासवणार. हे सगळं माझ्यासारखं दिसत कसं करू? बघा, काय दिसतो की नाही हुबेहूब तुमच्यासारखाच.
वा, आता काय बोलू, झकास.
Yes, please.
How long did this film take you to make?
Well, to get the money, it took about 7 to 8 years. And took me about a year and a half. The film is 44 minutes, 49 actually. But it took me a very long time. The main problem about making of the film was to have a seamless passage from life into poetry. And also for poetry, such a great poet who's so conscious of his rhythm, it was important to record the sound, the spoken word in a certain way. And in terms of what I have done is that we have mic'd all poetry very close. Though people might be far away, the character who is speaking sometimes can be very far away, but to maintain that very intimate contact with the reader, we have mic'd them very close and increased the bass frequencies to get. So all that took a lot of doing, to have the correct leveling of each word enunciated. And the other decision was to get the right rhythm of cutting. So I worked with a Bengali editor who was extremely sensitive to poetry but didn't know a word of Marathi. So I felt then, because if I had taken an editor who knew the language, perhaps he would have been swayed by the meaning of the word. I wanted it to respond purely as sound and as vibrations lasting for a certain amount of time, and the kind of space they create through word, not by meaning, but by the act of enunciating the word. So, because there is those Surve's poetry seems very simple and it's extremely complex, and there are the way he catches rhythms of the spoken word to actually create a character is quite amazing. And then visualizing the poems really took a long time, and editing, re-editing, editing, re-editing. But it was a film that made him very happy. First time that I showed it to him, he and his wife, I didn't hear anything. There was no response after the film was over. So I was sitting in the back, I came to the front, and I realized that his wife was crying and he was, trying to, because I think she remembered all the extremely difficult days, including his jail and arrest and all that. So I'm pleased with the film in the sense that it at least did something for the poet himself. Any other questions? One or two quick questions. Yes, please. Yeah.
नाही मी इंग्रजीत सांगू शकणार नाही. एक म्हणजे नारायण सुर्वे नाही म्हणजे सिनेमाची ताकद काय असते ती समजली. नारायण सुर्वेची कविता तुम्ही जिवंत केली.
What he says that I have made the poetry come alive again.
The only thing I wanted to know, what was the idea of yours behind taking Kishore Kadam and enacting as Narayan Surve when Surve was alive?
Yeah. See, first of all,
Sir, Rajesh is connected a question.
yeah, please.
Same thing. While planning the film on Narayan Surve, did you have it in mind first only to keep the actor and the
The script was written by Shanta Gujle and it was her idea, and the reason is very simple. If I have to, Surve was quite old when I made this film. He was about 73 or 74. So I couldn't make him sweep the school, I couldn't make him again work like a peon, and he had acquired a certain dignity, stature, and plus his age. I mean, he just wasn't. So I think this decision to have this actor, and it's a bit of a Brechtian device, because we lay bare the device at the very beginning of the film, when Surve and the actor meet, and Surve jokingly, when he says, "Look, I look exactly like you," and Surve says, "What can I say?" Because they are so different. But Kishore is himself a poet of some standing in Marathi, and he is an excellent actor, and he is a Dalit. So it helped me a great deal, because Kishore understood poetry so well that when he enunciates the poetry, I mean, he had Narayan Surve's recordings and he went over them again and again. But I played the recording before I shot the film to Narayan Surve, and he said it is impeccable rendering. Because his spacing, pauses, textures of the word, and he had completely, internalized that poetry, and he had lived with that poetry, he had grown up with that poetry. So that I think, did you feel anything odd about the actor playing Surve? Or?
No, it was superb.
Yeah.
Surve himself says that, the left and the workers were let down because they did not get their cultural enrichment, especially about the traditions and contemporary culture of Maharashtra and so on. He says that very clearly.
Absolutely.
But that vacuum would soon be filled up, both because the mills shut down and because of changing times by very much right-wing kind of ideologies.
Absolutely.
And that has transformed, in a sense, a lot of the culture of Maharashtra.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would like to say a few things about that.
I think the first important book that related the saint literature to the political structure of Maharashtra was Justice Ranede's book Rise of the Maratha Power, which showed how the base was prepared by the saints to have the kind of movement that Shivaji was able to start in Maharashtra, a kind of awareness, because this is a very important thing, that this poetry, though it was not written poetry, it was oral poetry. A Maharashtrian villager may know hours of poetry and still be completely illiterate. So this heritage, which some of the people like Surve and Amar Sheikh were aware of, was not seen in that connection as a continuity. So communism became a very alien force in Maharashtra as a result of a lack of understanding of history by the Communist Party, though there were people like wonderful thinkers like D.D. Kosambi, who had seen these links very carefully. So, I mean, that is what I feel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arun Khopkar, for a wonderful movie. The Ambedkar